I didn't cry when my husband died. I didn't cry when I buried my sister. But the moment I opened the fruit basket and saw the bill underneath, I couldn't stop the tears. I sat in the silence of my living room, the scent of overripe pears mingling with the faint pine of the plastic Christmas tree I had pulled out of the attic alone this year. The fruit basket was extravagant polished apples, chocolate-covered oranges, gourmet crackers and jams, all arranged in a golden-wired tray like it had been meant for royalty. Nestled beneath the cellophane wrapping was a note in my daughter's curvy handwriting. "Merry Christmas, Mom. Hope this makes you smile. Love, Aaron." And right below it, like a punchline in a cruel joke, was a folded credit card bill. My credit card. A $3,847 charge to Snowhaven Luxury Ski Resort. The date? December 20th. Just 5 days ago. I didn't recognize the handwriting on the envelope that delivered the basket. I guess that's what happens when your daughter sends you gifts through a concierge service instead of calling. I pressed my thumb into the sharp corner of the fruit basket and bit my lip until I tasted blood. The silence in the house felt louder than any music. This was my daughter's Christmas gift to me, an expensive gesture to disguise a selfish one. She hadn't called. Not once this season. Not on Thanksgiving. Not even when the first snow came and I sent her a photo of the backyard, blanketed in white. Just like when she was a child, and we'd make snow angels until our noses turned red. The message was marked seen, but no reply ever came. I thought of calling her. I even picked up the phone. But what was I going to say? Thank you for the fruit and the $3,000 betrayal? The clock on the wall ticked too loudly. It was the only sound besides my breath and the refrigerator humming in protest. I got up, slowly, knees aching, and shuffled toward the kitchen to make myself some tea. The kettle took forever to boil. I watched the steam rise and thought about Erin, her laugh as a child, how she used to wrap herself in lights just to make me laugh, how she'd cry when I took them down after Christmas. Where had that little girl gone? When she left for college, everything changed. She stopped visiting as often, stopped calling. At first, it was the classes. Then it was work. Then it was Greg, the boyfriend who thought I was too emotional and needy. Now, it was just silence. And every year, that silence got louder. I walked back to the living room with my tea and sat beside the tree. The lights twinkled cheerily, oblivious to the grief wrapped around my shoulders. I reached for the framed photo on the side table. Aaron and Tom, taken 15 years ago. Aaron was 10, all freckles and braces and joy. Tom was still alive then, his arms slung around both of us like he was trying to keep us anchored. "Tom," I whispered, tracing the glass, "what would you have done?" He would have laughed, probably. Not because it was funny, but because he always believed laughter could soften pain. But even he would have seen through the fruit basket. I opened the bill again. Each item glared at me like an accusation. Room service, spa treatments, ski rentals, hot cocoa for $18 a cup. Luxury. That's what she chose for herself while I spent December clipping coupons and rationing my arthritis medication because Medicare just doesn't cover what it used to. I spent an hour staring at the bill before I picked up the phone again. This time, I didn't hesitate. I dialed. It rang 3 times before I heard her voice. "Hey, Mom," she chirped, distracted. "Merry Christmas." "Hi, Aaron." My voice sounded thinner than I expected. "How are you?" "Oh, amazing. We just got back from the slopes. It's snowing like crazy up here. You would love it." She paused. "Did you get the basket?" "I did. I told the guy to make it extra fancy. You deserve it. I also got the bill." Silence. A beat too long. Then a laugh. "Oh, yeah, that. It's just a mix-up, I think. I meant to use my card. But I saw yours was still linked to the app, and anyway, I'll pay you back." "You'll pay me back." "Of course," she said quickly. "Just after New Year's. Greg's business is about to get this big influx, and Aaron." Her name landed like a stone in the space between us. "You didn't call me all month. You didn't check in. And now you want to pretend this was a mistake." "I didn't, Mom, come on. It's Christmas. Don't do this now." "Why not? When would be a better time to talk about how my daughter used me like an ATM and dressed it up with a bow?" Her voice sharpened. "You're being dramatic." I almost laughed. "Almost. I'm being honest," I said instead. "And if honesty sounds dramatic to you, maybe it's because you know how cruel this was." There was another pause. A longer one. "Look, I didn't mean to hurt you," she said quietly. Things have been hard. I needed a break. I thought the basket would make up for it." It didn't. The line went quiet again. I'll send the money, she said finally. I promise. That's not what I want. Then what do you want, Mom? Her voice cracked. What will make you happy? I want my daughter back. Not the one who sends gifts from an app. The one who used to ask how I was doing. The one who didn't measure love in dollar signs. She didn't respond. I could hear her breathing on the other end. And maybe, just maybe, sniffle. I'll call you later, she whispered. Don't call if it's out of guilt. Then I hung up. I didn't cry again. Not then. The tears had dried into something heavier. Something like resolve. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened the old piano in the front room. The keys were dusty, some out of tune. But I played. Just a little. Have yourself a merry little Christmas. My fingers stumbled, but the notes still found me. I didn't know what would come next. Whether Erin would call again. Whether she meant what she said. But I knew this. I would no longer mistake a fruit basket for love. And I would not let my heart be purchased, wrapped, and forgotten. The days after Christmas were always the loneliest. There were no distractions left, no fake tree to decorate, no old Christmas records to play, no dusty stockings to pretend were still meaningful. Just the cold echo of a house meant for more than one person. The halls used to echo with laughter, with Tom's humming, with Erin's constant chatter. Now they just echoed with my footsteps. I spent the morning going through the closet in the hallway, trying to stay busy. That's what the grief counselor once told me. Busy hands keep quiet hearts. But sometimes the hands finish their work, and the heart still screams. There were boxes I hadn't touched in years, Tom's old scarves, Erin's finger paintings from first grade, a snow globe she'd bought me at a gas station in Vermont when she was 14. It was cracked now. The little house inside had lost its roof. I ran my fingers over it and held it for a long time. In the kitchen, the fruit basket had started to soften. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. It felt like some grotesque symbol now too expensive to discard, too painful to enjoy. So it sat there, centerpiece of a grief I hadn't asked for. That afternoon, the phone rang. I let it ring twice before answering. Hi, Mom. Erin's voice came through, soft this time. Measured. Hi. A pause. I've been thinking, she said. About what you said. About me. Not being there. I didn't speak. I wanted to hear her without interruption. That had always been her complaint growing up. Let me talk, Mom. Just let me finish. I think I've been pretending you don't miss me as much as you do. That maybe if I didn't show up, didn't call, it wouldn't hurt you the way it used to. Or maybe I just didn't want to think about it. Still, I said nothing. But I've been sitting with it. And I realize I don't like who I've become. She let out a breath. Not a dramatic sigh. Just a quiet release. Like a weight had shifted somewhere deep in her chest. I used your card because I didn't have the guts to ask you for help. Because I figured you'd forgive me anyway. Because I think I've always known you'd pick up the pieces no matter how much I broke. That one hit hard. I pressed my fingers against my eyes and stayed silent. I'm not calling to say sorry, she added quickly. I mean, I am sorry. But not just for the bill. For all of it. For how I disappeared when Dad died. For not calling when you were sick last year. For forgetting how hard it is to be alone. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I've been selfish. And scared. And I don't want to be that anymore. Silence stretched between us again, but this time, it wasn't painful. It felt like space being made for something new. Finally, I spoke. I miss you, Erin. Her voice cracked. I miss you too. We talked for 2 hours that day. About everything. About nothing. About Dad. About her job. About how she'd been going to therapy, how she hadn't told me because she thought I'd think she was weak. Erin, I said gently, nothing about healing is weak. She cried then. Not loudly. Just little breaks in her voice that told me the tears were real. And I cried too. Quietly. Into the sleeve of my cardigan. She told me she'd canceled her New Year's party plans. That she and Greg were on a break. And that she didn't know where things were going. I didn't ask for details. I just listened. Listening. When she said goodbye, it was different this time. Love you, Mom. I love you too. And then she added, I'm flying in next week. Just for a couple days. If you'll have me. I smiled through the tears. There's always a place for you here, I said. There always has been. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at that fruit basket again. It still looked like a lie. But maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of a truth. I went to the fridge and took out the cheese that had come with it. Brie. Tom's favorite. I sliced it, added some of the crackers from the basket, and poured myself a glass of tea. I ate in silence, but it wasn't lonely. Not today. The next morning, I drove to the store. It had been months since I'd driven more than a mile. My knees protested every movement, but I didn't care. I went straight to the paint aisle and picked out a color called Soft Winter Sky. Then I bought brushes, drop cloths, a small stepladder. When I got home, I cleared out the guest room. Erin hadn't stayed in that room since her sophomore year of college. The wallpaper was peeling. The old twin bed was lumpy. The dresser still had the stickers she'd plastered on it as a teenager. But I cleaned it anyway. I repainted the walls, scrubbed the window panes, ordered fresh sheets online, and even splurged on a soft blue comforter that reminded me of the sky over Vermont, the one from that gas station snow globe. I found one of Tom's old flannel shirts in the closet and hung it over the back of the desk chair. I don't know why. Maybe I just wanted her to feel him when she walked in. Like he'd been waiting too. The days passed quickly after that. Each morning, I woke up with purpose. I cooked real meals. I played the piano again. I called Martha from the senior center and invited her over for tea. I even lit the fireplace one night and watched the flames until my eyelids drooped. It had been years since the house felt warm, not just heated, but warm. And on January 2nd, just after noon, her car pulled into the driveway. I opened the door before she could knock. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, but something in her posture. Something in the way her eyes immediately searched mine. "Hey," she whispered. "Hey." She stood there for a moment, her bags at her feet. And then she rushed forward and hugged me. Hard. Like she was afraid I'd vanish if she let go. "I'm here," she whispered into my shoulder. I closed my eyes and held her tighter. "Yes," I said. "You are." We didn't talk about the bill, or the fruit basket, or the silence. Not right away. That night, we watched old home videos on the TV, grainy recordings of Christmas mornings long gone. Erin's squeals of joy as she unwrapped dolls, bikes, pajamas. Tom's deep laugh filling every corner of the screen. We laughed, and cried, and laughed again. And later, as I tucked the extra blanket over her in the guest room, she grabbed my hand. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For letting me come back." I brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. "You were never gone, Erin. Just a little lost." She nodded, and I kissed her forehead. As I turned off the light, I realized something. Forgiveness wasn't a gift I gave her. It was a door I opened for both of us. The next morning, Erin was the one who made breakfast. I came downstairs to the scent of sizzling butter and cinnamon. The griddle was hot, a stack of French toast already forming beside a jar of strawberry preserves I hadn't opened in over a year. She was barefoot, her hair tied up, humming under her breath. Something tight in my chest loosened. "Morning," she said, without turning around. "Morning," I replied, quietly, not wanting to break whatever moment this was. "Coffee's almost done. Still like it strong and bitter." "Still do." We sat together at the table. I watched her pour syrup on her toast, just like she did when she was 8, an ocean of sweetness drowning the bread. For a moment, she was that child again. The one who used to ask me to cut off the crusts because they were too serious. "Mom," she said after a while, her voice low, "can I ask you something hard?" I looked at her. "Of course. When Dad died, did you hate me for not coming back sooner?" I stared down at my plate. The edges of the toast blurred. For a long moment, I didn't know if I could answer. But I had promised myself no more lies between us. "No," I said. "I didn't hate you." She looked surprised, and maybe a little ashamed. But I was hurt. I continued. "I was alone, and I didn't know how to ask for what I needed. And you were grieving too. I know that. But I kept thinking if Tom was her father, and I'm all that's left, how could she stay away?" Her fork paused midway to her mouth. "I didn't know what to say," she whispered. "I felt like I'd already failed you, and every day I didn't call just made it worse. So I kept avoiding it. Avoiding you." I reached across the table and took her hand. "We all run from pain in different ways. You went north. I went inward." A tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't brush it away. "I saw a therapist for a while," she said. "After the panic attack started. She asked me when I last felt safe, and I couldn't answer her. I realized I hadn't let myself feel safe since Dad passed." My thumb brushed across her knuckles. "That makes sense. You always made things feel safe when I was a kid. Even when money was tight. Even when the heater broke. You were the one thing that made sense." I smiled barely. "And yet you sent me fruit and a debt for Christmas." She laughed then, dry and a little self-mocking. "God, I know. I thought. I don't know what I thought. That a gesture would cover a year's worth of silence. That you'd see the basket and feel. Remembered. I saw the bill before I touched the apples. That made her wince. I'm sorry, Mom. I believe you. She squeezed my hand before letting go. We spent the day cleaning. Not because the house needed it, but because it gave us something to do with our hands while our hearts caught up. We cleared out the attic, dusted photo frames, even tackled the overgrown backyard together. At one point, Aaron pulled out a box marked Christmas Old, and we sat cross-legged in the middle of the hallway, unwrapping ornaments like they were ancient scrolls. This one, she said, lifting a tiny ceramic mouse in a stocking. I made this in 2nd grade. You glued its tail on backward. She laughed. And you still hung it up every year. Because you made it, I said, placing it gently on the floor. That made it perfect. She looked at me then, a sudden storm of regret in her eyes. I should have been here last Christmas. And the one before. You shouldn't have had to spend them alone. I shrugged. I stopped decorating last year. She frowned. Why? It didn't feel honest. I was pretending the house was full when it wasn't. She nodded slowly, understanding deeper than words. Can I stay through the weekend? She asked later, as we sipped tea in the living room. I know I said just a couple days, but I don't want to go yet. You can stay as long as you need, I said. She smiled, and I noticed how much older she looked now, not tired, but seasoned. Life had finally knocked some truth into her, and maybe it had knocked some grace into me. That night, she offered to make dinner again, but I told her no. Sit, I said, sliding the casserole into the oven. Let me take care of you for once. I'm not a kid anymore, she teased. No, I said softly. But sometimes, I still need to feel like your mother. She went quiet then, and I knew I'd said the right thing. After dinner, we sat on the porch wrapped in blankets, watching the snowfall start again. The sky was the color of pewter, heavy and quiet. Do you remember the snow angel photo? I asked. She laughed. The one where my nose is bleeding because I face-planted into ice. That's the one. I miss that kind of joy, she said after a while. That silly, wild joy I used to have. It's still in you, I said. It's just buried under all the things you thought you had to be. She was quiet for a moment, and then said, Greg hated that photo. Said it made me look childish. I looked at her. Do you still love him? She didn't answer right away. I love the idea of him, of who I was with him. But I think I stopped loving the reality of him a long time ago. You don't have to stay somewhere just because you've been there a while, I said gently. Same goes for people. She nodded, and I saw something shift in her. A decision beginning to bloom. Before bed, she asked if we could sleep in the same room, like we did after Dad's funeral. I didn't even hesitate. She curled up beside me, her head on my shoulder, the way she used to when she had nightmares about the basement monster. Mom, she whispered in the dark. Yes. Next Christmas. I want to spend it here. Really spend it. Cook with you. Decorate. Laugh. I'd like that. I don't want to miss any more. I pressed my lips to her forehead. Then don't. Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, something else was finally being restored. The first morning of the new year felt different. Not because the world had changed overnight, but because there was movement again between us, in the house, in the parts of me that had been still for too long. Erin was up early, making scrambled eggs while humming something I couldn't quite place. Her hair was a mess. Her socks didn't match, and it was the most beautiful I'd seen her in years. I booked a ticket, she said without looking at me. My stomach tightened. For when? Sunday evening. I need to be back by Monday morning. Clients, deadlines, the usual chaos. I nodded slowly. You'll come back soon? She turned. I want to come back for good. That surprised me. I've been thinking, she continued, about leaving the city. About finding something smaller. Slower. I'm tired, Mom. Tired of pretending I have it all together. Tired of building a life that doesn't feel like mine. I moved closer and poured her some coffee. You don't have to figure it all out right now. I know, but I've already started looking. There's a job opening at a nonprofit here, communications work. It's not glamorous, but it feels good. For someone who once said she'd never come back to this sleepy little town, that's quite the shift. She grinned. Turns out sleepy feels a lot like peace. I looked at her face, softened, less guarded. There were still shadows there, of course, but they no longer controlled the light. Later that afternoon, we drove out to the old park. It was frozen and empty. The swings creaked in the wind. The lake was iced over, and someone had etched a heart into the surface with a stick. Erin laughed and slipped her arm through mine. "This place still smells the same," she said. "Cold and pine and memories. You threw up by that bench once, right after too much cotton candy." She laughed. "I remember. You made me drink hot tea and promised I wouldn't die. I wasn't entirely sure you wouldn't." We sat in silence, watching two kids chase each other across the frost-covered field. Erin pulled her knees to her chest, like she used to when she was lost in thought. "I think I forgot who I was," she said softly. "Somewhere between college and the career and the apartment with all the right furniture. I started measuring myself by what I had, not by who I loved. You can always come back to who you are. It's never too late." "I'm scared." I looked at her. "Of what?" "That I've ruined too much. That I won't know how to be your daughter again." "You never stopped being my daughter," I said. "You just stopped being close." We sat for a long while, watching the sun dip behind the trees. I wanted to freeze this memento, capture it, like one of those Polaroids from the 90s, and tape it to my kitchen wall. On the drive home, she reached for my hand across the center console. We didn't speak. We just held on. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house was quiet again, familiar and strange all at once. I walked past the guest room, just to peek, and found Erin still awake. She was curled on the bed, flipping through an old photo album. "You look young in this one," she said when she noticed me. "Almost fragile. That was the year after your father and I almost divorced." She blinked. "You never told me that." "No need to. We didn't. But we came close." She patted the bed beside her. I sat down and looked at the photo, holding a tiny version of her, barely smiling. "We fought constantly," I said. "Money, time, his long hours, my temper. But one night, after the worst of it, we found ourselves sitting in the car outside the grocery store, holding hands. We didn't say a word, just sat there. I think that moment saved us. Because you chose each other." I nodded, even when we didn't feel like it. "Especially then." She closed the album. "I want to choose this. You. Us. I want that too." The next day, she asked if she could cook dinner again. She planned it: almond roasted chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, green beans sautéed in butter. She even lit candles. It wasn't fancy, but it was intentional. "Feels like Thanksgiving," I joked. She laughed. "Gratitude doesn't need a holiday." Halfway through the meal, she stood up, walked to her bag by the door, and returned with an envelope. "I paid the card," she said, placing it beside my plate. "You didn't have to." "I did. Because I'm not that person anymore." I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I simply placed my hand over hers and said, "Thank you." The night ended with music. Erin asked me to play the piano again, so I did. And this time, she sang. Her voice was untrained, slightly off-key, but it filled the house with something warmer than melody. When we finished, she turned to me and said, "You know what I remember most about being a kid?" "What?" "That I always felt safe here. Even when things were messy. Even when you were tired or Dad was frustrated. I always felt loved." "You were." "I still am," she whispered. And I realized I no longer felt alone, not in the way that haunted me last Christmas. The grief of what had been lost hadn't disappeared, but it no longer ruled me. In its place was something sturdier, softer, a beginning, born from an ending. The next day, I drove her to the airport. We didn't cry. Not this time. Because this wasn't a goodbye. It was a promise. "I'll be back in 2 weeks," she said. "I want to help you repaint the hallway. And maybe visit that job place again. I'll keep your room ready." She smiled, hugged me twice, and walked toward security. I stood there until she was out of sight. Then I got in my car, turned on the heat, and drove home singing softly to myself, just to keep the joy alive a little longer. At home, I noticed something on the kitchen table. A single orange from the original fruit basket, carefully wrapped in a napkin. On top of it was a note. "Save this one for when you need something sweet. I love you, Mom." The house was still after Erin left, but it didn't feel empty. Her scent lingered in the hallway, lavender, and something citrusian. There was music in the quiet now. The kind that lives in memory, in motion, in the evidence of connection rekindled. She had only been gone a day, but I caught myself smiling when I passed her room. I folded the blanket she had used and smoothed out the creases in the bed. This time, it didn't feel like cleaning up after someone who had left. It felt like preparing for someone who was coming back. In the afternoon, I walked to the mailbox in the cold, and found an envelope addressed to me in Erin's handwriting. It must have been mailed just before she left. Inside was a small card with a watercolor painting of a snowy cabin and words printed in gold. Home is where they wait for you without conditions. Her handwriting underneath was simple. Mom, just in case I don't say it enough, love, Erin. I read it 3 times. Then I placed it on the kitchen shelf, next to the photo of Tom. That night, I dreamed of when Erin was 5, running across the snow in her red boots, her cheeks glowing, her arms wide like she could fly. Tom was beside me, laughing, and I was holding a thermos of cocoa and thinking this is everything I'll ever need. When I woke up, I made a list. I hadn't written a list in years. Not a to-do list. Not a grocery run. A life list. Things I had been too tired or too sad to remember I wanted. It wasn't long, but it was honest. Paint the hallway with Erin. Join the church choir again, even if my voice shakes. Plant daffodils under Tom's tree in March. Invite Martha and Helen over for tea once a month. Learn how to video call. Ask Erin to show me. Write down the stories Erin's never heard before I forget. Laugh without guilt. I placed it on the fridge with a magnet shaped like a cat. Tom had bought it at a garage sale and claimed it looked like me when I was angry. He wasn't wrong. 3 days later, Erin called. You busy? She asked. Just about to scrub the bathtub. Well, drop everything. I got the job. I nearly dropped the phone. The nonprofit one. Yes, it's part-time at first, but they want me to help restructure their donor outreach. And the director used to know Dad. Said she remembered him leading a flood relief project in '93. Oh, Tom, I said, wiping a tear from my cheek. He would have been so proud. I think I want to move home, Mom. The words hung there, like a snowflake caught in the air, too beautiful to melt. You mean it? I asked. Yeah, she said. I do. I've already told the landlord. I'm finishing up my lease next month. Greg's taking it harder than I expected, but I think he knew. He said he hasn't seen me smile like this in years. You're really doing this. I'm coming home. I covered my mouth and cried. She stayed on the phone with me until I stopped. That weekend, she sent me a voice message of her standing in her apartment, sorting books into boxes. Remember the copy of Little Women you gave me? She said. Found it between 2 marketing textbooks. You wrote inside, for when you forget what love looks like, open this. I did remember. I wrote it the day she moved out. I walked to the bookshelf and found my own copy, worn and dog-eared, and opened it. Inside, I had scribbled something in Tom's handwriting. A family isn't perfect. It's present. Weeks passed in a blur of preparations. Erin returned mid-February with 3 suitcases, a box of cooking supplies, and a laptop she carried like a briefcase. She moved into her old room. We painted the hallway together soft winter sky, just like we said. The color changed the whole feel of the house. It was no longer a museum of the past, but a living space. A place where stories could still unfold. Erin started working 2 days a week at the nonprofit and filled the rest of her time organizing closets, reading on the porch, and attending the community yoga class with Helen from next door. She called it rehab for the modern soul. At night, we cooked together. We watched old movies. We even hosted a dinner for Martha, Helen, and their husbands. I hadn't done anything like that in years. And every time I passed that fruit basket photo still tucked into the drawer, I smiled. Not because the pain was gone, but because it had changed shape. Erin still had her moments. She'd get quiet sometimes, retreat into her room for hours, or break down when a song reminded her of the years she'd lost. But she always came back. She always let me in, and that was more than enough. One night in early March, as we sat watching the fire crackle on the hearth, she turned to me and asked, "Do you think Dad would forgive me?" I didn't answer right away. I looked at the photo of him above the mantel, Tom in his work boots, arms around both of us, smiling like the world was just enough. I think, I said slowly, he already has. Erin nodded, her eyes glistening. I hope so. Sometimes I still hear his voice in my dreams. But it's faded. Then we'll keep him alive in stories. Will you tell me one now? I did. I told her about the first Christmas Tom and I spent together. We had no money, no real tree, just a string of broken lights and 2 mugs of instant cocoa. But we laughed until midnight, slow dancing to the radio with socks on our hands because the heat went out. He called it our starter miracle, I said, and he never let me forget that love could live in small things. We sat there in silence for a while, holding those small things between us. And when I went to bed that night, I whispered into the dark, "Thank you, Tom, for sending her back to me." Spring came early. The daffodils bloomed beneath Tom's tree just in time for Erin's birthday. She turned 34. I made her favorite carrot cake with cream cheese frosting and invited a few of her childhood friends for a surprise party. She cried when she saw them. Really cried. And no one was uncomfortable about it. Grief had made us softer, but healing had made us stronger. That night, as the guests left and we stood in the kitchen washing dishes side by side, she bumped me with her hip and said, "Best birthday in a decade. Even without a ski trip." She laughed, "Especially without a ski trip." We were different now, both of us. She was no longer the girl who disappeared into silence, and I was no longer the woman waiting by the phone. We had changed. Not perfectly, not completely, but truthfully. And as spring settled into summer, as the days stretched and warmed, I found myself humming again. Erin joined the choir with me. She even started dating someone Nawa schoolteacher named Michael with laugh lines and a gentle way of listening. I liked him, but more importantly, I liked who she was around him. On the 1-year anniversary of that fruit basket, we took a walk through the park, just the two of us. The snow had long since melted, but the memory hadn't. She stopped by the bench, pulled something from her tote bag, and handed it to me. A small basket. Inside, 1 apple, 1 pear, and a single wrapped chocolate. And a note. "No bills this year. Just love. Happy Christmas, Mom. Thank you for waiting for me to come home." I took her hand, held it tight, and said, "You were always home. You just forgot where the door was." She nodded. "But you left the light on."